everybody. As David said, I am part of WGSN, which is one of the leading online trend forecasting companies. And I am here to talk to you guys today about the intersection of science and design. And we work with companies across the apparel, style, design industries to help give them future-forward trend research and inspiration that helps them be on the pulse of what's happening in the world so that they can develop and design great product that's going to resonate with consumers, how to create dynamic in-store experiences, create marketing strategies, or even things like packaging structures. So when we were asked to talk today, I got really excited because everyone here today is here to talk in some way or another about this topic, plugged, unplugged, the crossroads of technology and artisanship. When two worlds collide, something happens, something powerful, inspiring, and visionary. And I got excited because this is something that we've been talking about and tracking at WGSN for a while. And just to give some context, part of our methodology is that 2 times a year we have our global editorial teams come together for what we call Trends Days, where all of our content directors from everywhere, from New York to LA to Sao Paulo to Tokyo to Milan and Paris, are all coming together, and each of those local regions are presenting what's starting to happen and percolate in their markets. We do not look into a crystal ball, despite what some people think about trend forecasters. But what we're doing is really looking at all forms of art and culture and architecture, food, politics, science, technology, all of these elements. And we start to see what in those areas is starting to kind of gain momentum that seems new in each of those markets. We then have this core think tank team who looks at everything that was presented and says, what are the key overarching concepts that are starting to happen? And they bucket these into kind of 3 different trends that we call them. And that's really things that are, forces gaining momentum in society and in culture that we think are going to have relevance for the next 2 to 3 years. So why I'm telling you this is that one of our trends that we identified talks all about the concept of science and how science is really cool again. And it's no more, science geeks and tech nerds. This is a cool thing. And it's become very accessible and mainstream to the masses. And that is what I am here to talk to you guys about today, which is this new reality, this new world that we're entering into, where we have a new view on science and its accessibility. And with that, we're seeing this intersection of science and design, where these 2 worlds are merging together. And we're seeing that science, which was really, again, as I said, once reserved for only scientists and technologists, how it can offer a very fascinating, really interesting visual world and resources that are inspiring future products and just everyday lifestyles. So the first thing is let's just talk about why this is happening and why is this gaining momentum. Really, traditional boundaries have been being broken down over the last few years. And the words design and artisanship were really never said in the same breath with something like science and technology. But we've been undergoing this technological revolution where things that we thought could only be true in sci-fi movies are happening in real life. And as a result of this, these 2 seemingly disconnected things are no longer disconnected anymore. And this is a new world where designers, artists, and leaders in the innovation space are being inspired by science and technology and using these things within their craft in order to create dynamic and inspired new products, services, and aesthetics. So what are these ideas we're looking at? Science is a broad world, but there's 5 things I want to talk to you about and show you today. And that is engineered nature, DIY technology, luxury science, human body inspiration, and unexpected beauty. So I want to take you through how some of these artists and designers and leaders are tapping into these different themes, and this is really what has inspired our trend direction. So the first idea of engineered nature. Sounds like an oxymoron, doesn't it? But is this really the future of food, flowers, and all things that we consider natural? And a great example of how we're seeing people start to do that. On the left, this is an image from an art exhibit that's called Alter Nature. And it was 20 different international artists who explored the concept of how humankind has altered and manipulated nature throughout the centuries. And they had things like singing flowers, genetically modified insects, tiles that grow, really crazy, funky things. And on the right, this is one of my favorite examples. He is a Dutch floral engineer, and he is an engineer, not a florist, because he does not arrange flowers, he actually invents new breeds of flowers. And he modifies these plants, and he feels that this is his way to create new colors and shapes and textures. Instead of creating bouquets, he's actually creating new breeds of flowers. Another one of my favorite images, but this is from a cookbook called Modernist Cuisine, The Art and Science of Cooking. And it is not your normal cookbook. It was written by cooks and chefs, but also by scientists and inventors. And specifically, it was led by the ex-CTO of Microsoft, who has many degrees and PhDs in physics and math. And this book was really designed to transform your kitchen into a high-tech laboratory. And similar to the Dutch floral engineer, the book teaches you how to use different scientific-inspired cooking techniques to create new flavors and textures and smells. So again, it's very scientific-inspired. So DIY technology. Not too long ago, technology was only for a select few who were smart enough to know how to use it. But now it's really accessible to the masses and to mainstream culture. So this looks familiar to everybody, I'm sure, an iPhone, and I would imagine almost everybody in this room probably has one. But what's specific about this iPhone is that this was a homemade science project where you are now able to take tape, rubber, and a tiny glass ball and transform your iPhone into a high-tech, scientific-grade microscope. So powerful that people are doing this, then taking images of tiny blood cells on their skin and sending it to specialists all over the world, which is scary for doctors, and probably no one will ever want to become a doctor when this becomes mainstream. But this is how people are actually taking this scientific approach into a very mainstream DIY sort of aesthetic. Or the concept of 3D printing, which again, if you heard this a few years ago, you would have said, what is 3D printing? And that sounds like so futuristic, it's never going to happen. But there's a company called Freedom of Creation, which is a Dutch brand. And since they were started back in 2000, their whole belief was that 3D printing will become mainstream and that it will be so accessible that everybody will be able to print products in their own homes so that they're not reliant on what is being sold in stores. And that's pretty amazing if you think about those implications, that if I want a dress, I can print that in my own house and not go to the store. And on the right, this is a great example of an artist or a designer who actually has a whole collection of 3D printed dresses. So just the beginning of this starting to happen into mainstream culture. Luxury science. These two words seem completely contradictory, but they're not anymore. And we're seeing science and luxury become very synonymous and merging together. I think we're all probably familiar with the periodic table, something we learned in chemistry back in middle school. And it's very scientific and dry and boring in most people's minds. But this is a beautiful image from an iPad app, which re-envisions the basic periodic table and takes these scientific elements, like copper, which you can see here, and creates beautiful 3D images based on the elements. So they're taking something that can be very dry and boring, but creating a very luxurious piece. And this is another wonderful example of this. If anybody, you probably can't tell, but this is a sculpture from the Infectious Glass Beauty series. And this artist was inspired by colorful images of viruses that he saw in newspapers and magazines. He then took those images, enlarged them about 1 million times their size, and created a sculpture made from blown glass, which you can see here. And if anybody had a guess on what this retails for, but it is around $22,000. So this super high-end sculpture that is inspired by a virus, which is something we never would have thought happening in the same product. Human body. You know, our bodies have always been very medical and scientific, but we're taking that and using our bodies to become this new territory to really explore and provide new inspiration for future products. This is an example of an Italian perfume brand that's called Blood Concept. And what this perfume house did was to create 4 different perfume lines that are inspired by human blood types. So they have the brand, they have an A, a B, an AB, and an O. And each perfume is meant to react specifically with your own body, so you would buy the right perfume that was your specific blood type. And it just reminds me of the concept of even like the blood type diet and eating for your blood type, in the sense that no right food is right for everybody, and no one scent might be right for everybody either. And taking that to the next level, this is a product still in development called Swallowable Perfume, which is going to revolutionize in the concept of perfume, or even in the deodorant space. Think about this. But it is a scented capsule that you swallow, and once you start sweating, it emits an odor. but the potency of the scent is all dependent upon each person. What's their stress at the time? What temperature are they in? Even what their sexual arousal is at the time. And it's all based on individual unique needs at that moment. Unexpected beauty. Science also really lets us see beauty where it's least expected. And there's this real visual richness of biochemistry that can create a very desirable, interesting aesthetic. And we call that biopsychedelic. Think of the 70s psychedelic, but taking that into the biology world. And this is a well-known photographer who creates these stunning visual images that are used, that are created by a microscope, using a high-definition microscope with contrast. And he looked at caterpillars in severe detail and played with the colors and created these amazing sorts of prints. Or another photographer, in a different way, but equally as beautiful, who captures chemical reactions that happen in seconds that they are over so quickly they're almost hardly ever able to be captured. And what he does is take these beautiful photos with very high-tech photography equipment and create stunning images. And this is an example of carbon dioxide reacting with water, which he captured in that exact moment. So some key things to remember from this, the whole idea of engineering nature. So how do you play with using technology to alter and manipulate natural elements? Or DIY tech. As science becomes mainstream, how can you explore how technology can also translate into a DIY element? Or luxury science. Luxury now lives in parallel with science, so don't assume that scientific means boring. And human body inspired. How can the body inspire new concepts outside of the norm? And lastly, unexpected beauty. Looking to things like bacteria or chemical reactions for a new visual aesthetic. So you might be hearing all of that and go, all right, this is great and it's really interesting, but what do I do with that? If I'm creating product or I'm buying product, what does this mean to me? So I want to give you a few examples of just bringing this back down to reality a little bit more and show you how people in the apparel, interior design, packaging, marketing, and health and beauty worlds might start to take some of this inspiration and apply it to real product. In the apparel world, we're taking here this idea of biopsychedelic imagery and translating it into a new idea for print and pattern design in women's apparel. So think about the evolution of tie-dye and how we've seen this resurgence of tie-dye. How do you evolve that? Maybe you use these biopsychedelic prints to create something very new and fresh. Or in the interior space, we have a lot of interior designers who are starting to play with the concepts of science and physics and create products that are kind of defying gravity and appear as if they are weightless or floating, like this chair and a set of stairs. Or in the packaging world, we're seeing so many scientific diagrams being used just as types of packaging designs. On the left, the brand Aesop, which is an Australian skincare brand. Their whole Christmas gifting theme was all around different laws of science, from the laws of motion to the theory of special relativity. And they had scientific sketches and diagrams on all of their packaging. Or on the right, the brand Function Lab. They have their liquid dose ingestibles. They're all packaged in 60 milliliter test tube bottles using scientific imagery from the periodic table. So again, taking all of this just scientific graphics and using it as something new. The marketing area is really interesting, and looking at this within the beauty world. There's so much choice out there for consumers that they're overwhelmed oftentimes, and they're usually picking a product kind of hoping it's going to work, but not knowing for sure that it's going to. So we're seeing this swing back to kind of marketing to consumers in a very, factual, scientific way. So not marketing through hope, but marketing through belief and proving to them this is why your product's going to work. So seeing this resurgence of, statistics and facts and how that can help prove that your product is going to benefit them, or even just the simple concept of dermatological claims and the power that that will have. Or even in a health and beauty kind of product development area. And again, beauty is a great example because there's already so many scientists who are working on the products. But more and more are we seeing really innovative products that are using cutting-edge technology and scientific research to create something new, specifically in the anti-aging world. And this is an example of 2 products that are using plant stem cells in order to really enhance the anti-aging benefits of their products. So that was really, just a quick overview on how we're seeing kind of the worlds of science and design starting to merge, and how this scientific inspiration is starting to happen for designers and artists, and eventually we're going to see start trickling into new products. I hope this was inspiring and gave you some new perspective on science and design.